Okay, so I was ready to do my State of the Union on the state of Rutgers athletics. And oh, yeah, by the way, as you may have guessed, it's not really good, but Coach Schiano gave his off-season recap today in a press conference. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and maybe I can get into my OG rant about the state of the athletic program and, quite frankly, the university overall. Nonetheless, Coach Schiano gave an off. He's very organized and he's very strategic. This was going to be a press conference just talking about the off-season moves regarding mostly the coaching staff and how he feels about the guys that he has going into this season. He looked really relaxed and he looked content and kind of happy. And I've said this a bunch over the past several months, over the past season, over the past year, going back to the summer. When coach is on edge, he's a little bit edgy, I'm a little bit worried. You know, there's something on his mind that's bothering him that he might not be communicating, whether it's injuries or some other issues. Today, he looked like a guy that's happy and content with the direction of the program. You know, Mike and Richie from the Night Report today was saying, oh, you know, he actually saw Coach Schiano with a smile, which reminds me of, you know, the 2006 game against Louisville after they win, and Coach is coming off the field with his arms folded, and they said, it's okay, you know, it's okay to smile, Coach, on the broadcast. Nonetheless, he started off with the injuries, and injuries are something that has impacted our seasons of late. Off-season surgeries out for the spring. On offense, Kenny Fletcher, Dylan Braithwaite, Sam. Boy, I hope Sam can make a comeback. Brian Felter. Shedrick Rhodes, I was wondering why he didn't see much action. We need to see our offensive lineman with the bench dancing bear moves on the team get out there. I was wondering what happened to him. And then on defense, Mo Toure, Abram Wright, who had that freak injury, Isaiah Deloach, and DK Gilly out for the season. There was no clarification on what happened there, but he's out, and that's going to leave us with a little bit of lack of depth at safety. We got to hope that Jet has some success in his lawsuit against the NCAA to play his seventh season. We'll get to that in a second. Nonetheless, a good part, at least the first part of the press conference, had to do about, you know, the coaching staff and the new positions. Zach Sparbo, when asked about, you know, how he came about having both Rob Smith and Zach kind of be like co-defensive coordinators, the way that it's going to shake out, Zach will be part of the design and implementation of the game plan. And Rob Smith, as the experienced guy, will be the play caller. And we got, you know, they got into, and, you know, like Rutgers, NJ.com, Rutgers Rant guys are going to ask about NIL. They focus way too much on the modern era of paid professional athletes in what is supposed to be amateur athletics. And he kind of took a Coach Schiano kind of take on that. He's interested, as am I, how it all fleshes out. We all know players aren't supposed to be paid directly. Nonetheless, you know, we have what's coming up in April, right? The decision's coming up in a few weeks on that. And, you know, and Coach Schiano kind of a little bit of a dig, you know, when Politi asked him about it, and he says, like, we know that this has been going on for quite some time, but he understands what the question was from Politi. And he commented how on some teams last year, their rosters need $25-30 million. We won't say who that is, Ohio State. And, one of the narratives that goes around by people covering the teams, well, you can't keep up with them. You can't spend money. We're never going to, money doesn't matter. These teams are historically good and have an advantage that we don't have and may never have. We just don't have that tradition. We don't have that history of winning. And I've talked about in the past our weird evolution of a liberal arts college that was just decided de facto it was going to be the state university. And that process along the way, how we were becoming a state university, but somehow still playing Bucknell, Colgate, and Lehigh. We've always been behind the 8 ball. Nonetheless, that's a discussion for another day, maybe a little bit later on in this video. But in typical Coach Schiano fashion, after talking a little bit about NIL, he's like, well, I'm just worried about my team and what we're going to do. But he's going to be adding personnel to administrate the process. And one thing is, for certain, Coach Schiano is a top-flight administrator. He's an organized dude that's smart. And once again, several times, it drives me nuts. He stresses the importance of culture again and again as the driving force that everybody has to be vertically aligned with and on the same page. Now, it's not like I disagree with that. And I've talked about, I always mention this in virtually every video. Culture is great. Without execution on the field, it doesn't matter. So, culture is great. Yeah, we're 7-6 back-to-back years. But we need to be able to design schemes, because there are teams that win that don't have our as high a rank in recruiting as we do. And I've talked about for forever about Boise with recruiting classes in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And they somehow manage to be pretty good every year. Nonetheless, asked by Politi again about the GM, because that's all these NewJersey.com writers can talk about, is NIL, and are you going to get a general manager? But Coach said that they're not actively pursuing hiring somebody, because, of course, they have to be the right fit for the program. And when they come across that person that can fit it in to what it is that he wants to achieve as a program, they would absolutely take on a GM, but they have to be a cultural fit. And he talked about this, and talking about the coaches and about the program, that they have to be part of what it is they do, living a lifestyle it's not just a job. If you're going to collect a check and you just want to take a step on the rung of the ladder, I think Coach said there are other places that would be better fits for those candidates. But coaches and administrators have to be part of what it is that they do, and that is being a coach and promoting the idea of your athletes, because they are students and not professional athletes, handling their academics and growing them as men. So Coach is really continuing to put a lot of stress on culture, and and maybe this is one of the reasons why he looks really comfortable, is that he's happy with the direction, the guys that he has in place, coaching, administratively, how it's coming together. He actually said his role now is to pull all these different pieces of the puzzle together. And he's excited about springtime. Spring game is here to stay. He loves it. You get the sense that he feels it's still part of amateur athletics when you have Rutgers Day and the spring game on the same day. We will be having a spring game. He was asked, might have been by Richie from the Night Report, Uh, will they be having? Uh, will they be facing off against other teams in a spring game? I guess there was some speculation because Coach was down in Miami recently. Uh, that's and Coach he's up for having facing off against other teams in practice. So we'll see how in the summer, no less. But Coach is excited about the spring this time of the year because it's developmental time, and we all know that Coach loves the idea, as does Coach Michael, that they're a developmental program, and this is the time of the year that you can develop your athletes. Need a little something. By the way, for you bourbon guys and gals out there, if you haven't had Green River Foolproof, tremendous foolproof bourbon under $50. The entire lineup is really good value, but under $50, Foolproof is tremendous. All right, let's get back to it. So despite the portal and the NIL and the House decision to come down in a few weeks, he's still excited about developing his guys. He was asked about Jet Elad and his lawsuit to extend his eligibility beyond, I think it's 5 calendar years. I think it's 5 calendar years and 4 seasons overall. I think there's an issue with his junior college time at Garden City being counted towards his eligibility. But nonetheless, he'll be 24 next month. So, yeah, that's he's going to be. I don't know if he has plans to get into the pros, but if he enters into the draft next year, 25 years old, like Tyler Schiano, quarterback from Louisville, I guess he's going to be 26 before the season starts or when the season starts. He needs a starting position right away. He can't sit for a couple of years. Nonetheless, when asked by Brian Fonseca about Jet Elad's $500,000 NIL deal, Coach was not surprisingly non-committal, wasn't going to comment on it. He did say that when you read these stories, don't believe everything you read. It's been his experience. I read some news accounts of it, and if the news accounts are accurate, in the lawsuit, it was talking about how the family said that money, the $500,000, would go a long way to help out their family, who absolutely positively can use the financial assistance. So we'll see what happens with that. We're going to need safety help. On the field, Coach lamented how bad we were on getting takeaways, getting turnovers, and how they must get better. When asked about it, he thought it was a question about turnovers when he was actually being asked about roster turnover. So they had a little chuckle about that. But, I've talked about this during the season. When it came to turnovers, we were top 10 in not turning the ball over, but we were 108th in getting turnovers. So I think adding some defensive line help in the portal is kind of giving him some hope that we can do a little better this year. And he did mention how there is no breaks in the schedule. And my rant after this season, going 7-6, this was the year we had to get to double-digit wins. And how next year is going to be a problem. We not only have Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon on the schedule. We're going to Washington. They'll be better. Iowa always gives us a problem. But it's the non-conference schedule that's going to give us a problem too. Miami of Ohio and Ohio University, I think they both had double-digit wins. Or maybe Miami of Ohio was like 9-2 and they lost to Ohio in the MAC championship game. If you're penciling in those two as wins, don't. And I've said this before. These can be tougher games than we think. I think we do. Do we have Norfolk again? I think we have Norfolk again this year. So hopefully that's a win there. So that's where we are as far as the tone of the season going into spring. And hopefully we can avoid the injury bug. And, Coach did talk about during the press conference how the injuries that they suffered last year were like freak injuries. These weren't direct football hit related injuries. I remember, I think Abram Wright, I guess he was celebrating in the end zone, came down on his ankle. Coach didn't mention that, but, we all remember that game. So I guess we can get into a little bit the state of Rutgers athletics following a disappointing 7-6 season after really high expectations with a soft schedule. The profound disappointment of a 15-17 basketball season after, a lot of experts predicted us to be Sweet 16, maybe Elite 8 team. Richie and Mike on the night report went into, so the portal opens today. And there's a bunch of guys in there. I got to take a little closer look. Mike and Richie went over some guys in the portal that had some potential to be Rutgers signees. They didn't seem too enthusiastic about it. We might have to go in that low to mid-major territory again to get some guys. We'll see how it all shakes out. We'll have to do something on the portal very soon and talk about who might be a good fit, who might not be a good fit. Nonetheless, the women's basketball. Let's move on. The women's basketball, 11-19. Although they got a win against Army and the NIT the other night, and somewhat disappointing to me is what I think is our best team, the wrestling team. Doesn't have an All-American, I think for the second time in the past 3 years. We weren't going to have, anybody getting to the finals, but with a deeper squad, from top to bottom, there was an expectation we'd have some All-Americans. We had 3 guys lose in the 4th round wrestlebacks. That's one win shy of All-American honors. Dean Peterson got to the quarterfinals at 125 after, he had a takedown against defending champion Richard Figueroa of Arizona State. And he was leading his match against the guy from Northern Colorado before being taken down in the final minute. So he falls 1 win shy for the second time in 3 years. And in true Steve Peichel fashion, Coach Goodell kind of disappointed me. This was a Steve Peichel kind of quote, if ever there was one. It was a tough night, but that's the national tournament. We've been through this a bunch. It's been 18 years now, and these nights come and go. There were some really high nights, and there's been some low nights. Tonight was a tough one. Coach, once again, we have a program that can't take the next step. We were ranked around 11 and 12, 14 most of the year. We can't get inside that top 10, and when we do, we get absolutely creamed by top 10 programs, including programs that don't have a particularly long history like Iowa or Penn State. Virginia Tech was a top, whatever they were, top 6, top 7 team this year. Got to take that next step. Especially, I mean, this is what we do in New Jersey. We have the best wrestlers in the nation. It was a few years ago. Out of the 10 matches, we had 6 guys from New Jersey in the finals. Let's go. What are we doing here? We should be rivaling Penn State. Nonetheless, Dylan Chava, Joey Oliveri also went down in the 4th round wrestlebacks. And, we end the tournament with 5 consecutive losses. So, yeah, it's not a good place to be in with Rutgers athletics. Forgive the OG rant. I don't even know what to say any longer. It's not just NIL. Because even without NIL, we still weren't competing with these programs because we're up against traditions of winning that these other programs have. And I've gone through our weird history, how we've gone from I was a toddler when I was born, being in a liberal arts college, to moving up into state universities. We had, whoever thinks this is like an NIL issue, I've said this before. It's not NIL, it's not GMs or lack of talent in the marketplace. Keeping our student athletes home is an issue, and I've talked about that a bunch. We'll have to do something on that one day. So we had bigger wins in the 70s as we transitioned from, this liberal arts college in the middle 3 A-10 Patriot Conference, and then as an independent, and then the Big East, and then the Big Ten. We got to the Final Four in basketball in 1976. We lost to number 1 Alabama 17-13 in 1980. Could you ever imagine us even coming close? Not that we play Alabama, but say Ohio State. If we ever lost to a number 1 Ohio State 17-13, I'd be doing cartwheels. We're making progress. And we had beaten Tennessee the year before, 1979, 13-7, prompting the now famous quote from Tennessee folks before the game, "What's a Rutgers?" And that kind of became a joke for a long time because nobody knew what a Rutgers was. It was a public liberal arts college who played Bucknell, Lehigh, and Colgate every year. Holy Cross, Army, NYU. Yes, I remember playing Brown and NYU and Princeton. I was at the 11-0 game against Colgate when we won that 17-9, and I think we were 11-0. I think it was 11-0 at that time. Bear Bryant says Alabama won the game, but Rutgers beat them. So we can talk about NIL throwing money at the problem all we want. Even without it, we were more competitive 50 years ago. All right, as I was an adolescent and teen, than we are today. You just got to find a way to get good with the talent that you have. And that's where scheme comes in. Culture doesn't matter when you can't execute on the field. You can't put pressure on the quarterback. Culture isn't going to help. Could we ever even dream of being competitive with Tennessee? Not only just in football, in basketball, they'd cream us. And we lost to Alabama in basketball. Football school, losing to, congratulations to Cliffy, by the way, and Mawat, who were, seems like everybody who leaves Rutgers goes on to better things. But let's talk a little bit about football. 2024, 2025, we were 4-5 in the Big Ten, outscored 171-97 in Big Ten losses. So when I was just talking about wrestling, how we can't beat anybody inside the top 10. Oh, we did have one win against top 10 team this year, right? Was it Michigan that we beat? I forget. We never come close. You can give us all the NIL money you want. We're just not as good as these programs. Those other programs, if they didn't have NIL, would still be good. That's the difference. We're living on a 3-point last minute win from 19 years ago as the sine qua non, as our apex. I get tired of seeing that. It's almost 20 years ago. And maybe we should go back to like the Patriot League, Atlantic 10 type of conference. And, I've written to the Star Ledger for years about political issues, but a lot about our state of our higher education and how expanding what was culturally and historically a public liberal arts college, expanding it beyond what's the total student population now? 50, 55,000? And just deeming this liberal arts college a state university and being the only state without a university named after it. It's a classic New Jersey and really typical. But there's no academic or athletic competition with the University of New Jersey, a New Jersey State University, and a Rutgers. You could create the kind of environment. Maybe you could keep your better student athletes home instead of a Rutgers. What's a Rutgers? That's been a joke for decades outside the state. And we all know that Rutgers is considered the fallback college for everybody. We're kind of, we've climbed out of the 50s in the U.S. News rankings. I think we're like 44, tied for 45th now, which is some progress. And yes, the rankings don't always matter, but they're seeing something. And we were top 25 in the late 80s, early 90s in those U.S. News rankings. So this goes beyond the basketball program, the football program. There's something deeper going on with about how we conduct our higher education and how that all plays out academically and athletic-wise. When I say school, so like Florida, top 25 U.S. News University. When it wasn't long ago, and I remember that if you went to Florida, that was a party school. That's why you were going there. Schools we used to be ahead of us, that we were ahead of, rather. Texas, Illinois, Boston College, Wisconsin, Boston University, Ohio State. All those universities were behind us. Now they're ahead of us. We're falling behind academically and in athletics, and it's really pissing me off. So we're going to need to figure out how to be competitive, more competitive academically, and that might require some bold strokes restructuring our higher education. Back to athletics. In basketball, the past 20 years, we've had 5 winning seasons. 5! In the New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia area, ripe with talent. That's the best we can do. Why aren't we able to keep them home? Even before NIL. Why? Our Final Four team, Phil Sellers from Brooklyn, Hollis Copeland from Trenton, Eddie Jordan from Washington, D.C., but it's still mid-Atlantic. Abdul Anderson was from Belleville. Mike Dabney, East Orange. There's no NIL. There's no revenue sharing. Now we're going to be up against those realities And that's going to be part of the program. And I believe that there's people who are that think beyond that. Maybe under-recruited guys who are all effort guys. Maybe their life isn't going to be about getting to the league. And quite frankly, I'd be much happier being in a Patriot League kind of scenario for Rutgers, playing Cold Night Bucknell and Lehigh, and then getting, going 11-1, 12-0, and then getting to a bowl game and maybe knocking somebody off. And then let a University of New Jersey or New Jersey State University, maybe coalesce some of the other state universities into New Jersey State University. But we're not we keep crawling, both in athletics and academics. We're grinding and we're not taking the next step. Mike today was saying how he's looking forward to football. This is the time of the year, and Coach talked about this. If you can't be kind of happy this time of the year, there might be something not right with you, because you're looking forward to the potential. But all we have to go on is our record. The famous Bill Parcells quote, "You are what your record says you are." You're going to have to execute. This year in football will be particularly difficult for obvious reasons. And those obvious reasons are Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. Maybe for once, can we take one of those guys to the brink? It happens. Other teams do it. Basketball is a complicated picture. Who are we going to lose? Who's going to stay? Who's going to go? How are we going to do in the portal? What's the team going to look like? What's going to be our style? Are we going to go back to the kind of ball that Coach Peichel, that's in line with his personality and the way that he teaches and coaches? I think that is going to be the most fascinating part of Rutgers offseason. I'm not sure if we can can we take a step back? We're already, we were 15-17 this year. How much further back can you take a step back? Don't know. But how this team is constructed is going to be an interesting thing to watch. I was going to say fun thing to watch, but I'm sure I'll be pulling out a lot of these hairs. And I'm sure watching football will be somewhat frustrating as well this year. Hope we get to avoid the injury bug. Just renewed tickets, I don't know, a few weeks back. Season tickets, section 124. We'll see how this all shakes out. Nonetheless, that's kind of my semi-rant for the night. We'll see what happens with the transfer portal. Keep an eye on that stuff. It's it's like the NFL draft. This is the only time we get to have fun, so tracking the player movement will be fun. Everybody enjoy a great week. Enjoy some Green River Foolproof. It's good stuff. We'll see you the next time.